I guess it makes sense that I would devote my career to mapping emotions with science. First at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and then at University of California, Berkeley. Early in my career, I spent hundreds of hours in a basement lab discerning in frame-by-frame video analysis the expressions of embarrassment and shame, fitting for the paranoid young professor that I was. With the arrival of 2 daughters and the delights of family life filling my days, I would turn to the wonders of laughter, how we express love in the face and body, the vocalizations and physiological patterns of compassion, and how, with simple acts of touch, we can express gratitude. This work was animated by the thesis that emotions like compassion, gratitude, and love are the glue of social relations, which I summarized in my book, Born to be Good, The Science of a Meaningful Life. What about awe, though? Is awe a fundamental emotion, a universal core to who we are, like fear, anger, or joy? How would one study awe scientifically? Measure feelings that seem beyond words? Could we bring awe, so mysterious in how it arises, reliably into the lab? 15 years ago, my PhD students and I, as well as other scientists around the world, began to find awe in the lab. We charted this elusive emotion with new measures of the brain and body, physical responses like tears and piloerection, the contraction of small muscles surrounding hair follicles, sensations like the chills, and demonstrations of how awe transforms the ways we think and act. We have studied how we feel awe near great trees and in looking out at panoramic views, at sporting events, punk rock shows, and in the flowing effervescence of dance, in mystical experiences in prayer, meditation, yoga, and during psychedelic trips, in peak experiences with music, visual art, poetry, fiction, and drama. Science found awe, producing the first story of awe I will tell. Before science, humans were making sense of awe in forms of culture. The second story we will hear, then, is how culture archives awe. This is a story of how we create music, visual art, religion, fiction, and film to share in experiences of awe, so that we may understand the vast mysteries we face together in a culture we call our own. Awe animates the stories, ceremonies, rituals, and visual designs of indigenous peoples dating back tens of thousands of years. You might think of these as our first awe technologies. Awe structures the legends, myths, temples, and sacred texts of religions. It jumps out of paintings, photographs, and films, from Goya to Berlin street artists to the films of Miyazaki. And you can sense it in your body and feel its form in nearly every kind of music, from the sounds of the kora of West Africa to an Indian raga to Nicki Minaj. Science tends toward generalization. Cultural forms aspire to idealization and often some perfection of form. There is a third story of awe we need to hear, the personal and first person. This became clear to me when I asked people this question and listened to the stories they told. What is an experience of awe that you have had when you encountered a vast mystery that transcends your understanding of the world? If you have a spare moment, you might think of an awe story of your own. The stories I heard people tell reveal timeless truths about awe, about the awe of watching a quadriplegic person, a former Olympic athlete, take his first steps while recovering from a devastating injury to his spine, or being in the front row of a Coltrane concert when he was just breaking big, or from a woman in the CIA at Abu Ghraib who had discovered her pacifism in looking at the currents of the Euphrates River. Moved by these narratives, I gathered personal stories of awe from doctors, combat veterans, professional athletes, prisoners, writers, environmentalists, poets, musicians, artists, photographers, filmmakers, ministers, indigenous scholars, spiritual pilgrims, midwives, and hospice workers. Stories about the courage of people who suffer with disease and how nature transforms the traumas of combat, of how music allows us to find home in a strange land, about what it is like to nearly die and how we make sense of such extraordinary experiences. These personal stories reveal first-person truths in a particularity, metaphor, image, and vernacular that science simply cannot capture and that cultural forms only approximate. These three stories of awe